Please rise while Stephen Morse leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Doris Knetchel is our presiding officer for elections. She will now open the polls. Thank you. Good morning. We have a few announcements to start with. Let's start by reading the warnings. Let it be warned for the 2012 annual Newfane Town Meeting at the Newfane Union Hall, March 6, 2012. The legal voters of the town of Newfane, Vermont are hereby notified and warned that pursuant to the Title 17 VSA, Section 2655, they are to meet at the Newfane Union Hall in Newfane, Vermont on Tuesday, March 6, 2012 at 9 a.m. to act upon the articles below. Let it be warned that the Newfane School District 2012 annual meeting, the legal voters of the town of Newfane, Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Union Hall in said town on Tuesday, March 6, 2012 at 9 a.m. to consider and act upon the following articles. Before we go further, I have some announcements. I'd like to thank the Village of Newfane for the use of their hall, and to Bob Litchfield for turning on the heat. It's very nice. Our town crew set up. It'll be easier if people listen. I'll get through it faster. Thank you. A thank you to Carol DeFelice and Stacy Stack, who have, at the last minute, organized coffee and tea and baked goods, and donations benefit the Newbrook Elementary PTO. Please make sure to avail yourselves of those treats. It's been some time since we've had a meal the years that town meeting has been held at the Union Hall, but we're bringing it back. Dan DeWalt stepped up and has this announcement. After the meeting concludes today, we will have a potluck lunch. If you brought food, it can be placed on the counter downstairs. And before the meeting ends, we will reheat it. We'll reheat anything that needs to be reheated. And at the meeting's conclusion, we will bring the food upstairs where we can all partake. If you did not hear about the potluck, join us anyway. We have extra plates and forks, and everyone is welcome until the food runs out. I would like to remind people now to plan for next year. There will be a potluck following town meeting at the Williamsville Hall, so think about what you're going to bring. All right? Richard Merrick sends his regrets. He's quite under the weather and has stayed away for our health as well as his. He's sent over the material he would normally bring, including his answers to the dole poll, which I will read later. I would like to thank the town of Newfane for sending me to moderator school yet again. As you can see from Robert's Rules of Order, it's a big, fat book, and there's a lot to learn. The point of Robert's Rules is to ensure fairness, and a few things are worth reviewing. We can change Robert's Rules of Order, but we cannot change state law. Okay? This is one I'm really eager to tell you. Only one person can speak at a time. Right now, that's me. Please, Thank you. Um, in order to speak, you must be recognized by the moderator. We ask that you stand for the minutes. Please identify yourself, and then so we can all understand and hear you, let's listen carefully. Robert's Rules limits how often and how long anyone can speak. So after you have spoken on one article, you will not be recognized to speak a second time until everybody else has had a chance to speak first. We don't have a tradition of following this rule, but I'm going to try. Okay? I'm going to need your help. All motions, remarks, and discussion must be addressed to the moderator. And I will do my best to recognize you in the order in which you raise your hands. Okay, it bears repeating that after being recognized, please stand up and speak up. Please give your name in a loud voice so that everyone can hear what you have to say. And you are encouraged to use a microphone. I have Bauman Mondavi has again graciously lent us this PA system, and Dan DeWalt has set it up for us. And everyone is encouraged to use, there's one in the center. It's really easy to keep track of who wants to speak when if people line up behind the microphone, and then you will be sure to have a chance to speak. Okay? I remind you that you must be recognized to call the question, and it then must pass by a 2/3 vote of the House. My job is to help you accomplish the business of the day. If there's something you want to do procedurally but don't know how to do it, ask me. If I don't know, General Robert does. Okay? One of the few things I have the authority to do is appoint a parliamentarian. I am still looking for someone who is interested in helping me during this year of my service, which starts today and goes until the day before town meeting next year. If there's anyone who's interested in learning Robert's Rules and wants to help me out, please see me sometime during this year. And lastly, for Robert's Rules of Order, this is the 10th edition, which we're using today. There is an 11th edition out with 154 new rules. Okay? Most of them regard the use of new media. Now, you will notice we are being videotaped. I quote from Brattleboro Community Television. This meeting is being recorded by Brattleboro Community Television for broadcast on Vermont Cable, Southern Vermont Cable. Residents can watch the meeting this weekend and for the next 2 weeks, on the next 2 weeks on Channel 10, and streaming over the internet will be available to watch on demand at brattleboro.tv.org. Our camera operator is Teresa Maggio, who is known to many of you from the years that she lived in Newfane. However, she now votes and lives in Dummerston. So she will not be speaking or voting at today's meeting. And at this time, I would like anyone else who is not a legal voter of the town of Newfane to please stand up and identify yourself. Thank you. All right. I remind both of you that oh, I'm sorry? Oh, yes, please. Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else? Are you here for Professor Bryan? Excellent. Thank you. That would you just take a minute and explain what you're doing? Actually, I have to stop you. You're not allowed to do that. We would need 2/3 vote. But Professor Bryant has been studying town meeting for about 35 years, and he sends UVM students out to take data on who speaks, who comes, what happens at town meeting. It is the most comprehensive study of direct democracy in the world, and we're part of it. Could we please have everyone's attention as we welcome first-time Newfane voters? Any first-time Newfane voters, please stand up and identify yourselves. Yes. No, you're not. I know someone else, but please go ahead. Thank you, Rob Rowell. In the back? You're allowed to speak and vote from the floor, but you can't vote again by paper. Right. Okay. Just keeping you honest, Ruth. All right. All right. So now, if you would turn to your town report, you will see on the first page that it is dedicated to David Moore, Steve Jones, and Todd Brown. And if they're in the house, would they please stand up? Are they here? Am I the only one who didn't see anyone stand up? All right. I would like now to just take a moment and have everyone turn to pages 81, 82, and 83, where our vital statistics are. As we deliberate today, let us remember the 12 who have passed, and let us think also of the 15 who have arrived. And let us be mindful that we, the ones in the middle, have the obligation today to honor the memories of those who have lived and deliberated in town meeting before us, and we have the obligation to deliberate wisely for those who will follow. We meet today in the Union Hall because, and I quote, on March 25, 1833, after repeated attempts, as shown by the records of several previous meetings, the town voted to hold its meetings thereafter at Williamsville and Fayetteville, 1 year in each place alternately. This comes from the History of Newfane, the First Century, page 219. The hall itself was built in 1831 to serve the several Christian denominations in town, but that union dissolved in 1838, which is when the Congregationalists built the church next door. The Universalists continued to occupy the old house, I'm quoting again, until about 1853, when they found themselves unable to sustain a preacher. From that time, the house began to decay, and in 1872, it had reached that stage that it must be repaired or sink into utter ruin. It was repaired and remodeled into a hall by a public subscript and is now called Union Hall. The hall is now owned by the village of Newfane and is supported by a tax paid by the residents of Newfane Village, one of the few incorporated villages left in Vermont. In its 181 years, the Union Hall has survived many floods. In Newfane's first century alone, there were 5 devastating floods that made it into the history book. On September 23, 1815, several mills in Williamsville were entirely swept away, but were immediately rebuilt. On August 20th, 1856, a factory building where 8 to 12 men were employed making pails was carried away, as were several bridges, including the covered bridge in Pondville. Can anyone tell me where Pondville is? Yes. South Newfane. I understand why they changed their name. On July 13th of 1859, a sawmill was carried away during a heavy shower which swelled Baker Brook to a great height than it was ever before remembered to have reached, sweeping off nearly every bridge on the brook, including the one near Dr. Blakesley's, and doing a great amount of damage to private property. On October 5th, 1869, the New England states, and especially the Connecticut River Valley, was visited by one of the severest and most extensive freshets ever known since the country was settled. The damage in this town to roads and bridges was immense, to say nothing of the loss sustained by individuals. Smith Brook overflowed all known browns, and for the first time within the memory of man came flowing over the highest point in the road above Fayetteville in a depth of from 6 to 10 inches into the village, occasioning a good deal of alarm and not a little dismay. Finally, on March 24th, 1875, Fayetteville, which is the old name for Newfane, was visited by the most terrific thunder shower ever known, raising Smith's and Bruce's brooks several inches higher than in 1869, the water flowing down the street and covering the east side of the common. So the point of this is we are not the first and we won't be the last, but we're the ones here to make the decisions today. Let us do so passionately and politely. Peter Galbraith has asked to address us, and if there is no objection, he would like to do so now so he can go visit the other 22 towns in the county. So if there is no objection, I give you the Honorable Peter Galbraith.
I know you have a busy agenda, and I won't take up very much time. This is my first time to speak to the Newfane Town Meeting as your senator, so I really want to thank you, my neighbors, because for years the Galbraiths had Newfane as our address, even though we lived in Townsend. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't begin by talking about the extraordinary spirit that I saw in Newfane and Williamsville and South Newfane in the wake of Irene, the way the town came together, particularly at the Williamsville Grange. I went there 3 nights, partly to offer support and partly because of the excellent food. But let me just briefly touch on some of the things that we're dealing with in the legislature. I've placed a particular focus on our economy, and I've always thought that the most important thing we could do for our economy is to get 21st century technology throughout Windham County. And I'm pleased that Stephen Morse, who's on the Vermont Telecommunications Authority, is here, and he's played a big role in it. We've passed legislation, and there is the money, so we will actually have broadband throughout the county by 2013. I'm sorry that the Colt, which was operating in Williamsville and South Newfane, is gone, but I think a lot of credit goes to AT&T for responding within 24 hours and getting the thing up and running within 36 hours. I know there are a lot of people who don't always think well of big corporations, but certainly this is one time when the big corporation came through. We also are focused on the economy of Windham County. On the Economic Development Committee, I made a particular pitch that because Vermont Yankee was closing, and this was independent of how you feel about the plant, but it is a big employer, that we had carried the economic burden and the environmental burden of having that plant here. The state ought to pay attention to us, especially since our economic indicators, particularly per capita income, lag significantly behind our neighboring counties in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or Vermont. And the Economic Development Committee has done that. We held hearings. We've gotten some money. And what I'm pleased to report is that we will continue to have the focus, even though it appears that Vermont Yankee is not going to close, at least in the very immediate future. And two other issues, again, on the economy. We've had some very tough times from a fiscal point of view in the state of Vermont, nationally, and I know you know this in the town. But things are slowly improving. And as the economy improves, state revenues are improving. So while we will have a shortfall this year, it will be less than it has been in the past, which means cuts are less likely. But we do, of course, have the additional burden of trying to deal with Irene. We're hoping that FEMA will be coming up with 90% of the funds, meaning that the projects here in towns will be split between the state and the towns, 5% each, although we're also looking to see if the state can pick up an even larger share of it. So that's a major issue. And finally, last year we passed comprehensive health care reform that will lead Vermont by 2017, we hope, to a single-payer system, which is not going to cure all the problems, but it will be fairer. We hope it will reduce, actually, the rate of increase in the cost of health care. But there are many hurdles that lie ahead in terms of implementation. Partly it requires waivers from the federal government that may or may not be available. And we also have to figure out a system to pay for it. That's not a small point. So these are some of the issues. There are many others that I could discuss, but I know you have a full agenda. So again, thanks for giving me the time to say a few words to you. And of course, please do be in touch if you have some specific issues. I try to be responsive, apparently not 100%, at least when the power is out. Thank you.
All right. So we've done something this year. This is the sort of thing you learn up in Montpelier at Moderator School. And the Board of Education and the Secretary of State, we are right now have 2 meetings going. Both meetings are in session, but we have a tradition in this town, and we can only continue with one at a time. We have a tradition in this town of alternating the school board meeting and the select board meeting. And this year, it is the turn for the school to go first. So if there is no objection, we will continue, we will recess the town meeting until the conclusion of the meeting for the Newfane School District. Hearing none, we will the town meeting is now recessed until the conclusion of the school meeting. And this time I would invite the school board to please come up to the stage. Thank you. You will find the warning for the school meeting on page 4 of your town report. Article 1 is to elect the Newfane School District officers as required by law for the ensuing year, and voting on this article to be by Australian ballot from 9 until 7 tonight. The polls are now open, and the ballot is as printed in your warning. If there is no objection, Kim Friedman, the chair of the Newfane School Board, would like to give you a report on the year past. Hearing none, I give you Kim Friedman.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Can you hear me? Testing. Now can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Deb. As some of you probably know, I am chair of the Newfane School Board and also chair of the Brookline-Newfane Joint School Board. I wanted to make a few comments. As you know, we won't be voting on the budget today, so I won't be speaking about that unless anyone has any particular questions. First, I'd like to introduce the rest of the esteemed school board: Ken McFadden, Pam Myhack, Brandy Pickering, Kim Colligan. And we also have two colleagues in Brookline who sit on the joint board with us. I'd also like to take this occasion to introduce our wonderful new principal at Newbrook Elementary School, Chris Pratt. I come to this town meeting with some mixed emotions because Brandy and Pam have both decided to step down. They have represented our town with dedication, intelligence, and integrity. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I know I can speak on the behalf of the entire joint school board, to serve with both of them, and I think they both deserve a hearty round of applause. I have been on the school board, first the Newfane School Board and then the joint board for 5 years, chair for 4. I am running for another term. We have an older daughter in college, but I just can't quite pull myself away. I'd like to thank Chris for the energy, the new ideas, the openness to looking at the way things are done, and his wonderful energy. It has been a pleasure to work with him since last summer. So thank you again for being part of our community in this way. There still seems to be a little bit of confusion as to how the Newbrook school budget is being determined. I just want to remind everybody that as of 2 years ago, the school budget is now determined in February at a joint meeting of Brookline and Newfane residents. That meeting took place on February 11th, and the budget, which is a little under $2 million, was approved unanimously by a combined vote of Newfane and Brookline voters. We would have loved to have seen more people at that meeting. Hopefully you all got a mailing from us, from the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union office about the budget. We do have a number of copies of the mailing that went out that includes the budget that was approved, and I'll have them down with me if you'd like to have a copy. I would like to point out, though, that the budget is down about 1% from last year, the budget that was approved. The only budgetary matter before you today having to do with the school budget is a proposed change in the way that the school officers are compensated. We, as a board, talked about it and decided that we would, number one, like to have consistency between the way that Newfane school officers and Brookline school officers who serve on the joint board are compensated. And because it makes it much easier to plan financially, are proposing that we move from an hourly rate to a set amount for each school officer. And we are proposing that that amount be $200 each for school officers and $2,300 for the services provided by the Newfane treasurer to the school. In the spirit, though, of full disclosure, I also want to mention that the school budget that was approved on February 11th also includes an additional $1,000 for the chair. So that would be a total of $1,200 for any chair who serves, and then an additional $400 for the vice chair. but that decision was made in February, so the decision before you today has to do with the $200 for each of us. I'm going to stop there. If anyone has any questions about the budget or about how the school is functioning or the joint board is functioning, we of course would be very happy to entertain any of those questions. And I want to thank you for your ongoing support of the joint board and of Newbrook Elementary School. It is an honor to serve our town in this way.
Thank you. All right. As I'm sure you can imagine, or maybe you can't imagine, these volunteers spend a lot of time learning really arcane and complex law about educational funding and mandates, and they do it on our behalf, and I think they deserve our thanks. So thank you very much. Article 2, to compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each, and the Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. Do I hear a motion? I need to know who that is. Fred Bacon. Is there a second? Greg Record. So Article 2 has been moved and seconded. It reads, to compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each, and the Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. Is there any discussion? Greg, Record.
Record, Newfane. I would like to just comment that this article humbles me. This is the first time in all my years as an active individual in Newfane politics. My hat's off to you folks. You were the first group of elected individuals that I think gets it. This is truly in line with the way it should be. It was very nice for a change for someone not to be worried about what's in it for me, and you just have you guys serving us the way you're doing. This it makes things easier for everyone, and I think it's very obvious that you guys aren't in it for the money, and that's refreshing. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? What would you like to do? Myra Fassler, what would you like to do? Move the question. Is there a second? I need to know who's Chris Gray. The motion to move the question has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. We will now vote on the question. Okay? So, if you vote aye, you are in favor of it, and if you vote no, you're not. Article 2, to compensate the directors of the Newfane School District $200 each, and Newfane School District Treasurer $2,300. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying no. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Article 3, to set the date of the annual meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday of March in the year 2013. Does anyone want to make a motion, please? And that was Stephen Morse. Who would like to second that? Neil Pelsu. Article 3, to set the date of the annual meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday in March in the year 2013. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will assume that you're ready to vote. All those in favor of Article 3, to set the date of the annual town meeting of the Newfane School District for the first Tuesday of March in the year 2013. Please indicate so by saying aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The motion passes unanimously. The reason for what seems like a lot of repetition is, again, General Robert telling us how to make this legal, okay? Article 4, to transact any other business that may legally come before the meeting. Is there anyone who'd like to make a motion? Myra Fassler has moved Article 4. I need a second. Nancy Riga. Is there any debate here? Is there anyone who wants to speak? Yes, Ellen Rothman. Yes, please use the microphone. Oh, you have to turn it on the left, on your right.
Okay.
That's very good.
Okay, hi. I'm Ellen Rothman. I'm the coordinator for after-school enrichment programming at Newbrook Elementary School. And I have some happy news to report that the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union has received a grant, a 21st century grant, to help support after-school programming at 7 participating schools. And this year, the 7 schools have about $445,000 to use for this purpose. Research has shown that students who participate in after-school programming benefit from the programming in terms of academic achievement and emotional growth. And so at our school, we are currently offering 4 sessions a year with about 12 classes going each session, and we serve about 65 kids each session. And the classes that we offer vary a lot, from stuff related to cooking, to building birdhouses, to knitting, to story walk, to Legos. Anyway, I want to invite the community to be a part of this. The program is designed to help connect students with the community, and we're seeking community people to teach classes at the school. So please, if you're interested, there are bright green pages up at the front, like this, and please contact the school. My information is on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the House? There's a move to adjourn the school meeting. Is there a second? Second. Tom Bedell seconded. All those in favor of adjournment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying no. School meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Stephen Morris moved the adjournment. Tom Bedell seconded. Before we reconvene the town meeting, if there is no objection, Richard Merrick has asked me to give you a brief version of what he would have said, including the Dole poll, which he's filled out. Hearing no objection, I'm going to read Dick's notes. Okay, so the Dole survey, as you know, has been going on for about 40 years. We are recipients of it. Anyone who wants to answer the questions? Here's the Dole survey. We don't have a place to put them. You can put them over here when they're filled out. So here are the questions, and here are Richard Merrick's answers. Should Vermont continue its efforts to close Vermont Yankee? He says yes. Should drivers be prohibited from using cell phones while driving? He says yes. Should Vermont have a 4-year term for governor? He says no, and there's an asterisk. He says, as usual, several of my Dole responses require brief comment. Whichever response you prefer, this won't be happening anytime soon. He's referring to a 4-year governorship. It isn't moving in the Senate committee this year, and the idea won't be able to be brought up again for 3 years. Even then, it would have to pass in 2 different biennial sessions and then go before the voters for an up or down vote. So we're 7 years out, at least. Do you think that Governor Peter Shumlin is doing a good job? Richard says yes. Do you believe the Vermont legislature is doing a good job? He says yes, but there's a star. Your opinion on this one is the one which counts, he says. Are you optimistic about the future of Vermont? Yes. Are you optimistic about the future of our nation? Yes. Do you believe Vermont's bottle deposit law should be expanded to include all bottled beverages? Yes. Do you support the federal law which requires everyone to have health insurance? Yes. 10. Should wind turbines be built on Vermont ridgelines? Yes, and an asterisk. There are very few sites in Vermont which even potentially qualify, but with tight controls, a few may prove acceptable. Only conservation is absolutely zero impact, which is why we are emphasizing it so heavily. 11. Should state and federal funds be used to allow Vermont's school children to have nutritious meals? Yes. 12. Should Vermont legalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana? 2 ounces. Yes. Asterisk. The term actually being used in proposals in Montpelier is decriminalization rather than made legal. This would apply to small civil fines rather than criminal penalties for low-level possession, while recognizing that federal law still makes it illegal. It seems unlikely to pass this year. Should the high school dropout age be changed from 16 to 18? Yes. Should the state of Vermont continue support for our working farms and forests? He says yes. So he also says, could you also mention 2 non-Doyle pieces of good news? And I think this will interest you all. We are still waiting to find out whether FEMA will be paying 75% or 90% of the town's Irene claims. The state would then pay a portion of the remainder, with Newfane paying the rest. Current figures show that Newfane's portion would either be $247,000 or $123,000, depending on FEMA's decision. We have recognized the disproportionate financial impact of this on the most severely damaged towns and just voted to have the state pay everything above the amount equal to 3 cents on the town's grand list. This will cap FEMA's match at about $81,000 under either scenario. 2, and this is the last thing he's got. The state also has decided that it will step in and pay the 25% local share under the federal 75% hazardous mitigation grant program, covering properties which should not remain or be rebuilt in dangerous locations. This will relieve Newfane of all of its costs for participation in that program. In addition, Dick has sent along his a few things. This is information about the I Am Strong Vermont, I Am Vermont Strong license plate. The funds go to the ongoing Irene relief. I'll put it up here. There is an update on Vermont's recovery from the storm. That's this one. And here is Dick's legislative update for anyone who wants. These things will be up here along with a lot of information about recycling and the information that Ellen just gave us about the after-school program and some other social services. So when you have a chance, come up, take these things, and fill out your dole form. So. If anyone here did not receive a town report, do you have the piece of paper? See Gloria, please. There's a piece of paper to sign if you did not get a town report. The town tried very hard not to send duplicate reports, and inadvertently, some people didn't get any. So, and they want to correct that. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So there is more good news. Dennis Wiswell has just handed me more good news that's even more up to date than what I just read from Dick. Mark Pickering at Vermont Trans states that Federal Highway has accepted our reimbursement documentation and is processing a payment to the town of Newfane for $857,667.53. We should see the funds within a few weeks. There's more. He also states that the state of Vermont is paying for the paving of the Dover Road, which cost a total of $384,057.34. This is at no cost to the town. This is not a final reimbursement figure, as more work has been completed since the paperwork was submitted. And thank you. This all just pertains to the Dover Road. I'm sure there would be more chances for you to talk about this. But, and now the town meeting will reconvene. As soon as I find my place. You have before you the Select Board, who, when they stood for election, did not anticipate Hurricane Irene. Okay? So, I think we can thank them for going from a part-time job to a full-time job, and for all the work that they did to get us through that tropical storm. Article 1, as printed in the warning, will be voted by Australian ballot, and the polls are now open and will remain so until 7 o'clock tonight. Article 2, to compensate, let me get to the right, we're now on page 1 of your town report. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2011 town meeting, found on page 70. Gunther Garby has moved that Move the motion. Tom Bedell has seconded it. Article 2, shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2011 town meeting? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, are we ready to vote? On Article 2, shall the voters of the town of Newfane accept the minutes of the 2011 town meeting? All those in favor indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying nay. Any abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the minutes are accepted. Article 3, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses. Town clerk, $33,600 annual salary. Town treasurer, $33,600 annual salary. Listers, $13.50 per hour. Other elected or appointed officers, $8.46 per hour. Mileage reimbursement at 50 cents per mile. 55 cents per mile. Is there a motion? Gunther, Myra Fassler has moved that. Gunther, or do you want to second it? Yes. Okay, Gunther Garvey has seconded it. So Article 3, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses as printed in your warning? Is there any discussion? Yes. Identify yourself, please. And yeah, thank you.
I wonder if the select board could explain the reason for 5% increases for a couple of our elected officials in a year when folks on fixed incomes and Social Security are only seeing around 3.
Gary, please tell everybody who you are.
I'm Gary Katz.
Thank you. Gary Katz has asked why there is a 5% increase in the salaries for elected officials in the year of the rest of that, the year that we've had cuts and everything else. Is that what you said? I'm sorry. 3% inflation. I'm sorry.
Social Security recipients received about a 3% increase.
Okay.
A lot of people on fixed incomes receive nothing. Why are our elected officials getting 5%?
Okay. Did everybody hear that? All right. Is there any discussion?
Marshall Glickman, Williamsville. My understanding is that go to the microphone.
Please go to the microphone.
My understanding.
Start over, Marshall.
Sorry, Marshall Glickman from Williamsville. My understanding is that the 3% increase of Social Security actually underreports the actual inflation rate by quite a bit. That the government basically tinkers with the numbers so that they don't have to pay so much, but things like fuel and healthcare costs and things like that actually far exceed that. So I think the 5% is probably more in line with reality, is my understanding.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Yes.
Greg Record, Newfane. Now I'm going to make up for what I said about the school board. I personally find this article selfish, unwarranted, and an insult. We have dedicated this town report to 3 gentlemen, and it could be anybody in this room for that matter, that exemplified what this community is about. They went out above and beyond. There was never any talk of compensation, or what's in it for me. I just think it's a shame that our elected officials, now, I don't want to get involved in it. I want to make sure everybody understands. I'm not talking about the road crew, the administrative assistant, the teacher salaries, any of that. I'm talking about elected officials. You also, Mr. Glickman put in his report, this is a 5-year high for people not being able to pay their taxes. Locally, I think a lot of us are never going to see what we've seen here. We probably won't live again to see devastation that we've witnessed. Statewide is just as bad, and federally we know what the mess we got there. And yet here we are, Article 3, our elected officials are asking for raises. I would like to make an amendment, if that's okay, Madam Moderator, to amend this to be level funded. Figures would be as follows. Town clerk, $32,000. Listers, $13 per hour. Other elected and appointed officers, $7.53 per hour. Mileage, 50 cents. That's what it was last year. I thought that was too high, but I think we should at least keep it there.
There's been an amendment by Greg Record, seconded by Gary Katz, to amend Article 3 to read as follows. The town clerk's salary to be $32,000 annual salary, town treasurer $32,000 annual salary, listers $13 per hour, other elected or appointed officers at $7.53 an hour, and mileage reimbursement at 50 cents a mile. That is now the motion on the floor. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
This was an article that the select board wrestled with. Hello?
No.
No? Hello? Hello?
It sounds like it's on.
Is it on? Yes. It is on. It's on. This was an article that the select board wrestled with like we do every year. It's always, when you talk about people's raises,
Hold it close.
when you talk about raises for people, it's always a very sensitive area. But we felt that over the past 2 years, as you know, only a couple of people received raises last year. The year before, raises were very small. I'd also like to point out that this 5% raise was not something that either the town clerk or the treasurer requested. The board discussed it, and we decided it was in line due to the effect of inflation and everything else that's going on. The hard work that they've done over the past 2 years, where they received very little increase in compensation. And therefore, we decided to give them a raise. We had two people that had to recuse themselves for obvious reasons, Todd and Gloria, because of the conflict of interest, they're town employees. The remainder of us, John, Chris, and myself, voted unanimously to give them the 5% increase. We still feel that our elected officials and our other town officials are underpaid as in comparison to other towns and employees across the state. There is going to be a comprehensive study undertaken this year with this select board voted for that, and I assume it'll be done this year. But there'll be a comprehensive study taken on to take a look at where we stand within the state as far as the pay for our elected officials. And over the next few years, we hope that whoever the future board is will consider bringing the wages of these individuals up to a standard where they should be.
I'm sorry, I can't recognize you until everybody who wants to speak first gets a chance. Gunther and then Doris.
Barbie, as far as the pay for everybody else, I believe you cannot pay less than the state minimum, which is $8.48. And on a mileage, it's federal, 55 cents, and I'm not sure you can pay less than the IRS allows.
Thank you. Doris.
In reference to the listers haven't received an increase in pay for I think our last increase was about 4 years ago, to $13 an hour. And we gave some information to the select board requesting that we get $13.50 an hour. The majority of the people within our area for listers make at least 14, and some is as much as $15 an hour. This is like Guilford and Wilmington and Dummerston. The increase amounts to the 3.76, which is the same as the cost of living increase, which was received by the increase Social Security and whatever. So it corresponds with the cost of living increase, that 50 cents, and we haven't had an increase in like 4 years.
Thank you.
Dan DeWalt, point of information. Actually, this goes to the select board. I'm not sure about the other elected officials. The select board doesn't have to, they are the exception to the minimum wage and the federal inflation. So the select board is just its own beast, and it can be paid as treasurers we want.
All right. And Gary, forgive me, I think that you are allowed to speak on the amendment. You haven't spoken on the amendment. You only spoke on the original article. Okay, so you are allowed to speak one time on this amendment. You have to turn it on.
Is that better?
Yes.
I just wanted to respond to Dennis's point about the absence of increases over the past couple of years. For the past 3 years, state employees have been frozen at their pay levels. Federal employees have been frozen. Social Security recipients have been frozen. We did nothing with our elected officials other than reflect what's happening in the nation in a time of an economic problem. Everybody has a hard time meeting their financial obligations. It just seems borderline outrageous that our elected officials should receive an increase that's larger than the increases that the people who are paying their salaries are receiving.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the amendment? Okay, I've got Maureen, then John, and then there was another hand here. Maureen, please identify yourself.
Maureen Alberti-Yasik, the treasurer of the town of Newfane. I just wanted to let you know that I know it's an elected position, but it is our income, and we've been putting in a lot of extra hours. We've been working weekends, and as for myself goes, you know, taking work home, and I just feel that, you know, with the cost of everything going on and the extra work that the state, and not including just the work that we are doing because of the flood, but the extra work that the state and auditors require of the treasurer, I think that, you know, it's a fair, and all the other employees full-time are getting the same thing. So we are full-time workers at the town office. I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you. John Mack.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I got a voice. We thought about this long and hard in terms of all the people who do work for the town, whether they be employees or whether they be elected. Elected officials are nevertheless workers, and they are full-time workers in the case of the treasurer and the town clerk. In the case of the listers, they're per hour. They haven't had a raise in several years. It's one thing to say that we're going to hold things for a period of time, but if we keep holding things for a period of time, and other towns in the region, et cetera, and other costs continue to go up, you're really putting enormous pressure on these people to become sort of volunteers who are in no position to be volunteers in their position. We thought that the most reasonable thing would be to treat all town, whether employees or officials, equally. And given that, particularly that there were minimal raises in the last couple of years, we thought to try to catch up a little bit, and we did take a look. We have committed to a long-term review of the salaries, but a quick look at the salaries, comparable salaries, it certainly looks like Newfane is being particularly stingy with its town workers, and we really felt that was wrong. So our feeling was, and my feeling certainly is, that given the work that these people are doing, whether they be employees and not showing up to the work, but showing in the budget, or whether they be town officials, that they deserve our support. If you look at the actual numbers, these are not high numbers. When you're talking about a full-time employee making $33,600, this is not a huge amount of money, and it is something that I feel we as a town need to afford to make sure that we are moving toward giving living wages to all of our employees, whether they be officials or employees.
Is there any further discussion of the amendment? You would need permission to speak. Do you want to speak? Is Shannon Meckel, our administrator, our town administrator, is not a resident of the town of Newfane. For her to speak, we need 2/3 of the House to vote that she may. So I'm going to put the question to you. Is the House willing to let Shannon have the floor? Please indicate yes by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying no. You have 2/3 of the vote. Please take the floor.
One thing that I thought might be important to mention is that with the loss of one of the highway crew members, there is a 4-man crew now, which that amount of money was still sort of in there. So what the board did was give the 5% to every employee without actually raising the budget at all. So, because they have chosen to stay with a 4-man crew. So you're not actually changing the bottom line of the budget at all.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this amendment? Have you spoken to the amendment? A point of information. Yes, Mr. DeWalt. Oh. I'm sorry. What do you want to do?
I want to speak to the amendment.
You want to speak?
I gave a point of information, so I don't know.
Just hold on. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Yes. Please identify yourself. And
Hi, Dan Nisnik. You spoke earlier, Maureen spoke earlier about salary versus wages, and I have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with the dollar amount, but if a person has to work overtime, should it not be wages and not a salary? Now, you mentioned salary at $30,000 or whatever it is low. So should it be 40 or 50? I don't know. But if it's wages, the individual has to work overtime. Now, an hour or two a week is nothing, but if an individual has to work 10, 12 hours a day, let's say, then maybe they should be compensated for that. Especially if it's extraordinary, if it was, Hurricane Irene or something. But that's my issue. Should it be a wage or a salary?
all right. The motion on the floor, however, is the amendment. So right now we're discussing the amendment to Article 3, and I'm going to remind everybody now what the conversation is about, okay? You haven't done anything wrong. I just need to bring us back to what the amendment is.
Well, I thought she was talking about that, but she mentioned the overtime, that's all.
Okay. Your first name, sir?
Dan.
Dan. The amendment, as it reads now, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses. The town clerk, $32,000 annual salary. Town treasurer, $32,000 annual salary. Listers, $13 per hour. Other elected and appointed officials, $7.53 per hour. And mileage reimbursement at 50 cents per mile. Is there any further discussion about the amendment?
I did call the question.
You have to be recognized to call the question, and I'm now going to recognize Dan DeWalt.
I would like to propose an amendment to the amendment. It seems like we have two things.
Please come to the mic.
I think I'd like to propose an amendment to the amendment. It seems like we have two things. We have the question of full-time salaried employees, and we have question of elected officials. And I don't want to make a wrong impression. I think our select board, the amount of money we pay our select board is not a lot. However, if we have a philosophical approach to our elected officials, our select board, that they are serving like the school board. I like Greg, was pretty taken by the school board saying, okay, we're going to make $200, which is like saying we're making nothing to work our butts off for you people. That's not that we expect people to do that, but that is a real service of our elected officials. So maybe we should, I would propose that we peel off the select board, treat them as a separate entity, and cast this vote on the
salaried employees and then have a separate discussion about the select board, because to my mind, I would like to see the select board not take that raise. Not that I don't think they're working hard and getting underpaid, but it's not about pay, as opposed to a full-time job, which, whether you are serving the town or not, is also about your pay. So my amendment is to, for the moment, strip away the select board from this particular amendment and just have it consider those other officers.
So what you are proposing to do is divide the question. Okay? And I may need some help. I saw Pete here. We need to, there's an amendment to the amendment. Yes. All right. We don't really have the amendment yet. We don't have the language yet, and we would need a second. But what I would like to suggest in my role as moderator is that what you want to do is divide the question, and if you could come up with that, that would be helpful. And that is what I would suggest is that you amend the earlier numbers are still in place, but you would like to remove. Well, I think that maybe you want to just vote on the salaried employees first, separately.
So just want to remove, the amendment would be to remove the select board from this amendment.
Only the select board. Only the select board. Is there, the amendment is to remove the select board.
But the amendment has the select board at the lower wage salary.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We want to, yes, point of order.
Should we vote on the amendment first?
No, you.
Take up Dan's suggestion to the original article?
You can do it that way, but that's not the way he has chosen to do it. You are allowed to amend an amendment once. You can't amend, you can no longer amend, but now that we have the amendment to the amendment is this. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses? The town clerk, $32,000 annual salary. The town treasurer, $32,000 annual salary. Listers, $13 per hour. Mileage reimbursement at 55 cents per mile. So we've just eliminated other elected or appointed officers from that. That is the amendment. Is there a second? Who is that? Margaret Wimbauer has seconded it. Is there discussion? Just like to give you all a little lesson in procedure here. We're going to, after we discuss, you're next, after we discuss the amendment to the amendment, we will vote on it. Whether it if it passes, it becomes the amendment. Then we get a chance to vote that up or down, and if it passes, it becomes the article. So we've now set ourselves up for at least 3 votes, and please, you've been very patient. Can you please speak up, Katie?
Yep. I just wanted to let everybody know, too, there's members on the select board, there's members on the planning commission, there's members on the development review board who can get paid hourly, and they don't. In fact, the majority, nobody, I think, on the planning commission submits a timesheet. Nobody on the development review board submits a timesheet. Half the select board does not submit a timesheet. So I just want other people to know that we have other town officials in positions that we budget for that have the right to submit a timesheet who don't. So it's just another aspect that no one has looked at or may not be aware of. So there's other money that, I mean, we could be everybody in the town could be submitting a timesheet who is elected for positions, and a lot of them don't. So I just wanted to make you aware of the other parts of Newfane, Planning Commission, the VRB, half the select board. They don't submit timesheets. So that's a lot of money right there that they can, $8 and whatever an hour, or 7 something an hour now. So I just wanted to say that.
Is there any further discussion of the amendment to the amendment which removes the line other elected or appointed officials at $7.53 an hour from the article. Yes, no, I'm sorry, I'm acknowledging Neil Pelso, and I do need to inform Myra that you need to be recognized to move a question. You can't just shout it out. Thanks.
Question clarification. Dan's amendment to withdraw the select board from the article.
Yes.
The line that you were reading to omit is other elected and appointed officers.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie suggests that there are other elected officers who have the potential for receiving revenue from the town for their services.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Just the select board or everybody?
That's a good question. The question is it just the select board we're removing from other elected and appointed officers, or is it just the select board? And if I'd been paying closer attention, I would have said it has to be other elected or appointed officials, otherwise it changes the motion too much. So are you amenable to that, Dan? So the amendment reads, is to remove that line, take the line about other elected or appointed officers at $7.53 an hour out entirely, not just the select board. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Tom Bedell.
Bedell, Williamsville. Katie suggests rightly, from my experience, that this is largely a moot point. It's going to make no difference whatsoever, so I would submit that we move the amendment to the amendment.
Is there a second to vote on the amendment to the amendment? Marshall Glickman seconds it. So, if you vote yes, you want to remove the line that now reads other elected officials and appointed officials at $7.53 an hour. If you vote no, you will leave that line there and get it, and in any instance you get a chance to vote again. Does everybody understand? Okay. We're now going to vote on Article 3 as amended so that the line other elected or appointed officers to be paid $7.53 an hour will be taken out. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. No. The motion fails. We go back to the amendment. The amendment reads that will pay the town clerk $32,000, the town treasurer $32,000, the listers $13 per hour, other elected and appointed officials $7.53 an hour, and mileage reimbursement at 50 cents. Is there any further discussion? Kim? The question has been called. Is there a second? Ken McFadden has seconded. All those in favor of voting, yes? Where the amendment is 50 cents. We're voting, okay. So now, are you ready to vote? The question's been called. I need two-thirds of the House has to want to vote. Are you ready to end discussion and vote on this? Anyone opposed? All right. If you vote yes, you are voting in favor of the amendment, which is to reduce the town clerk to $32,000, the town treasurer to $30,000, the listers to $13,000, other elected officers to $7.53, and the mileage to 50 cents. If you vote no, we will go back to the original motion. So, you have a question about the voting? Level funding. We're choosing to level fund. Are there any other questions, points of information? Does everybody understand what we're doing? All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. No. The noes appear to have it. The noes have it. The amendment fails. We're now back to Article 3. Is there any further discussion? Jill Spiro has called the question. Jill Spiro. Is there a second? I need a hand. Kim Friedman. Okay, we are going to vote on Article 3 as it is printed in your warning, and I'm going to read it one more time. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to pay its officers for the ensuing year the following salaries and expenses? Town clerk, $33,600 annual salary. Town treasurer, $33,600 annual salary. Listers, $13.50 per hour. Other elected or appointed officers, $8.46 an hour, and mileage reimbursement at 55 cents per mile. A yes vote is in favor of this, a no vote opposes it. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Article 4. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the first 3 months and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid? Do I have a motion? Please identify yourself. I'm sorry. Jody French. Second. Ken McFadden. Is there any discussion? Gunther Garby.
Gunther Garby. It says 1% per month and then 1.5% until paid. Should that be clarified that it's the word delinquent show in there somewhere?
Gunther Garby asks if the word delinquent should go in there. Maureen Albert Piatek.
The way it's been is that it has been 1% for the current year until it's paid for current year. And then if it goes into delinquent, it gets raised to a 1.5% interest, becomes prior years, and then it gets the 8% payment.
And the question is, does the wording of this motion need to be changed?
I believe so.
And does somebody want to suggest how that would happen? I need some, I can't do this. Maureen, do you have a suggestion here?
Well, I suggest that we change it to current year 1% interest charge for each month up until April 15th for the current year. Thereafter, it goes to delinquent, and it's a 1.5% interest charge and an 8% one-time penalty. But we're talking about the interest, so it's a 1.5% interest after it goes into delinquent per month.
Okay. This is just about the 1 and 1.5%. We can't add the 8%. That changes the motion too much. I need language that we can vote on, though. So I need some help with that. Marshall Glickman. Can you speak up so that...
If you could just put the word late, as in the late charge.
And where would the word late be inserted?
Right after the semicolon, between the and charge.
The late charge for interest. So there's an amendment. Is that your amendment? Can you please stand up and so everybody can hear what you have to say?
Sorry. Marshall Glickman, in this case, the collector of delinquent taxes. If we add the word late, I think Gunther's concern was it sounds like everyone should be paying this charge. There's also what Maureen pointed out about the fact that it does change when it goes into delinquency as opposed to just being late. There's kind of essentially we close our fiscal year on April 15th. Anything that's unpaid then goes into delinquency, gets turned over in this year to me. But the word late, I think, so there's two things going on. One is add the word late so it suggests it's only, interest is only charged if you're late, and then the other aspect is to distinguish when it goes from the 1% to the 1.5%. So there's two things going on.
Okay, so you are proposing an amendment so that it reads from the semicolon to insert the word late between the and charge. So it reads, after the semicolon, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the first 3 months and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid.
Yeah, if you wanted to follow what Maureen was suggesting, or I think the way we actually operate, you would just say the legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month if it, for the year after. Yeah, that would be the simplest way.
And so you're proposing an amendment to change this. Is there anything after? So to strike out the first 3 months and have it say for the current fiscal year,
yeah,
and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid.
That could work. Yep.
All right. Is there a second? And you are? Lawrence, your last name? Campany? Did you get that? We need your names for the record, as well as wanting to know who each other are, whatever. There's an amendment to Article 4, so that it now would read, the amendment would read, shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. That is the amendment to Article 4. Is there any discussion?
Actually, I have a question.
Please stand up and identify yourself and speak.
To me, it just doesn't sound right, because what you're saying, the way it's being worded is, if I'm late on my taxes for the last quarter, automatically I'm getting charged 1.5% interest, whereas if the first quarter of the year I'm late, I'm only getting charged 1%. So anyone who is... No, fiscal year. Right.
Excuse me, let's...
So,
yeah.
Depending on what time of the year, if somebody's late on their taxes, somebody's paying more than somebody else. It's just as delinquent on that money.
Is there any... Okay, is there any further discussion? I need to make sure other people who haven't spoken, please.
My name is Helen Prescott. I'm not sure it's sensible the way it works when you insert the word late. I wonder if it would be better to say the interest charge for late payment being at the maximum legal rate. I don't know. It's clearer to me that way, but perhaps I'm misunderstanding.
This is an English teacher's dream.
I was a math teacher.
Tom Fidel.
As I pointed out to the Professor, we had pretty much the exact same wording last year, and the world only almost came to an end. So I would just say keep it the way it is and move on.
Is that a formal motion to vote on the amendment? And there's a seconded. Okay, so now we are voting on the amendment to change the article so that it reads from the semicolon on, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. A yes vote will change the wording. A no vote will leave it alone. If the amendment passes, we get another chance to vote on it. Does everybody understand? So, Article 4, as amended, to read. We're voting on Article 4 to to read as follows. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. All those in favor of this amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying nay. I'd like a division of the House. I need my Board of Civil Authorities. I'm not clear on that. Those in favor, I need those in favor to stand. And those not in favor, make sure you're sitting down. So all those in favor of this amendment, please indicate so by standing. We are voting. I'm asking everybody to please just pay attention to whether you're standing or sitting while we count you. All right? And if you could stand still, that would be even better. Fred Bacon, you're trying to be counted several times. And thank you very much. Those opposed, please indicate by standing up. And those who... I think it's pretty clear. Okay, it's very clear. Thank you. The motion passes. The amendment passes. Thank you very much. Kim? We're now talking about the amended Article 4 as amended with the language we came up with.
Kim Friedman, South Newfane, and I realize you might say that I'm out of order. It's a concern to me that we are debating this on the floor as a community. I would propose that we table the amendment. Table may not be the right word, but I would like to suggest that those who have expertise in this area confer, come up with a proper wording, and we come back to this. I think this is a slightly irresponsible way to be setting tax policy for the town.
Are you making a formal motion?
Yes, I am, but I'm not quite sure if the word is to table or postpone or...
To table it means to put it off indefinitely.
Yes, and that's not what I'm intending. I'm suggesting that we come back to it after there is... So the folks who have the expertise have crafted the proper wording and can come back to us with that proper wording. I don't think it's appropriate for us as a group to be wordsmithing this article.
I do believe that would require a special town meeting. But in any event, it's been made and needs to be seconded if it's going to happen. So is there a second for Kim's motion to table this Article 4? Yes?
It's not.
There's a point of clarification?
I think her question is not to table it for another town meeting, but to put it aside while we go to other articles, while the people involved, so the treasurer and the delinquent tax collector, get together and put the language down that's appropriate.
Right now.
not vote on it another time, but vote on it before we're leaving
I'm
right now, just a minute, there's a point of order. Bear with me. We have passed the amendment so that the article is amended with the language we came up with. We have not passed the article.
Right, and I'm proposing that we postpone, not table indefinitely, postpone any further discussion of the amended article until, as Bob suggested, the appropriate parties confer and come back to us before the conclusion of town meeting today.
All right? You're going to have to just give me a moment because we have this and I also have this. I'm going to see if I can find on my cheat sheet how we're supposed to handle this. So give me a minute. There is a motion on the floor. Unless is there someone here? Can you handle? I mean, we're talking about procedure now only.
Simply propose to take consideration out of order. Place it elsewhere
in the meeting. Kim, would you be amenable to that? Neil Pelsu has suggested that we take this amendment out of order, and which means we'll return to it later. That's the language that he wants to use. We don't want to postpone it definitely.
That's fine. I was just conferring with...
We can postpone to a definite time. It's debatable, it's amendable, it's not interruptible, and it can be reconsidered. Yeah. Is that what you want to do?
Yes, thank you. That would
postpone it until after Article
12.
After Article 12. Yeah, thank you. I have to do this by procedure, okay? Waving your hand at me isn't going to help, all right? Thanks. There is a motion on the floor that takes precedence, and it is to table Article 4 until after we consider Article 12. And there is a second from Lawrence Campion. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing, but Lawrence, there's a question? There is now a discussion. We can discuss the motion to postpone this Article 4 until after Article 12.
Madam Moderator,
yes.
Table is a non-debatable issue.
We're not. The motion is not to table it. The motion. If I said it, I'm sorry. We are postponing it. Thank you. The motion is to postpone the discussion of Article 4 until after Article 12. It has been seconded. It is the motion on the floor. Is there any discussion about tabling this motion? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, it's not debatable. It's just vote, we just vote. I'll try it one more time. The motion on the floor is to postpone the discussion of Article 4 until we finish with Article 12. I got it right? All right. Is there any discussion of this motion? Maureen? The amendment was to insert the word late after in between the and charge. Are you saying that? The amendment. Okay, that's what I needed to know. So you're saying that you're agreeing with the amendment? And not to postpone it, but with the amendment. So, okay. Sir, Daniel. Thank you. Is there, did everybody hear? Daniel, your last name? Is there any other further discussion about the motion to postpone the vote on Article 4? What would you like to do? I need a show of, I need somebody to raise their hand. Yes, Dan. Call the question. Is there a second? Okay, we've got Dan. All those in favor of the current motion is to postpone voting on Article 4 until after we finish Article 12. Those in favor of postponing, please indicate so by saying aye. Those opposed by saying no. No. The motion fails. We will take up Article 4 as amended. Article 4 currently reads, shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Is there a motion to vote on the amendment? No, you want to speak? Dan DeWalt wants to speak to the amendment?
I think the idea of the town charging 12% interest for 3 months and then 18% interest for everything after 3 months is way too much. I think in the
that is not germane to the current motion. Is the amendment? It's not. We're not discussing the amounts of the interest charge. We're discussing the insertion of the word late and changing the words the first 3 months to current fiscal year. That's the only thing we're discussing right now. And Bob Lyons wants to say something. Move the question. Is there a second? Tom Bedell has seconded it. So we are now voting on the amendment to Article. On the amended article? Have we voted on the amendment? Forgive me, I got confused. We have already accepted the amendment. In which case I wasn't right cutting him off. And now, I'm sorry. I'm in a conundrum. Yes, get me out of it. I'm going to ask for a recess if there's no objection. I need to figure out what I'm supposed to do here. So we will recess for 5 minutes, and we will be back in 10 minutes to 11. Thank you. Thank you. The meeting will come back to order. I have I've consulted with people who know Robert's rules better than I, but boy, am I learning them. I have made an error in cutting Dan DeWalt off, and I have compounded the error by accepting a motion to end debate and move the question, which has been seconded. So fixing it is at my discretion. And what I am going to do is we need to hear from Dan, and then we need to move the question. So you can speak, but it's too late to make any other amendments because there's already a motion on the floor.
Point of information, the motion on the floor is?
To move the question.
And that got seconded?
And it's already been seconded. And
the question you were moving was what you thought was the amendment, not the actual article.
No, it's the article. The article, as amended, we're ready to vote on it. But I didn't know that and cut you off.
So
So if you have something you need to say, this is your opportunity, but you can't change it because we're going to vote.
Well, then we didn't have the adequate discussion on the actual article in that case. So in that case, what I'm saying is moot. So I think we shouldn't be charging this interest at this time. It's a real slam on people that don't have the money. I think we should lower that interest rate. But if we have somehow in a questionable manner made it so we can't debate it, then I'm not going to pursue it.
I apologize for that. I think that the motion is been moved and seconded. I don't remember who seconded it. John? You know.
He's just, Dan, you are just speaking.
Excuse me.
Sorry, he's just speaking against the motion. He's had it.
The article before us is to vote on the amended Article 4. Okay? We have amended it. It now reads, Article 4, shall the voters of the town of Newfane pay taxes for the ensuing year on a quarterly basis due on the 15th of August, October, January, and April, the late charge for interest being at the maximum legal rate of 1% per month for the current fiscal year and 1.5% per month for each month thereafter until paid. And all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the motion as amended passes. Article 5. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to sell or otherwise convey acquired property through the tax sale proceedings? Is there a motion? Fred Bacon has moved it. Is there a second? Bob Lyons seconds it. Is there any discussion? Article 5, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to sell or otherwise convey property acquired through tax sale proceedings? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Are you ready to vote? Okay, Article 5, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to sell or otherwise convey property acquired through tax sale proceedings? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. Those opposed by saying no. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Article 6. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,125 by taxation for the Visiting Nurse Association of Vermont and New Hampshire? Myra Fassler moves the question. Is there a second? Joyce Van Pamelin seconds it. The motion on the floor is Article 6. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,125 by taxation for the Visiting Nurse Association of Vermont and New Hampshire? Our House rules or traditions are that we have somebody speak to this. That be Gunther Garby.
Service last year provided 807 home care visits in Newfane, visiting 29 residents. They also absorbed $24,819 of non-refundable expenses, and were blessed with a $500-some-odd-thousand from the tax.
Did everybody hear that?
Want me to repeat it?
At the microphone. Well, you didn't shout loud enough.
Well, anyway, what do I do here?
You're
It's
on. It's on.
Oh, good. I'll stand back. Closer?
Move closer, yeah.
Thank you. The Visiting Nurse Service provided 807 home care visits in Newfane last year, visiting 29 residents. They also absorbed a $24,819 non-refundable expense and were charged $500,000 in state taxes.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? It appears that you're ready to vote. On Article 6, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,125 by taxation for the Visiting Nurse Association of Vermont and New Hampshire? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The motion passes. Article 7. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,604 by taxation for Valley Cares Incorporated? Is there a motion? Tom Bedell. Is there a second? Myra Fassler. Article 7 is on the floor. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,604 by taxation for Valley Cares Incorporated? Is there any discussion? Is there anyone here from Valley Cares to speak? Greg Record?
Greg Record, Newfane. I'm honored to serve on the board at Valley Cares up in Townsend. This organization used to be known as the Valley Health Council, and the town of Newfane, since 1971, has given money to this organization. In keeping with my purpose here, this has been level funded since 2001, so I encourage you to vote for it.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. On Article 7, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,604 by taxation for Valley Cares Incorporated? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The motion passes. Article 8. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 by taxation for Grace Cottage Hospital? Is there a motion? And that was Neil Pelsu. Is there a second? Hilly Van Loan. Article 8 is, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 by taxation for Grace Cottage Hospital? Is there someone in the House to speak to this motion? Neil?
And the staff, medical and support staff, and particularly the patients. We thank you for your past generosity and encourage your support of this article. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take it to a vote. Article 8. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 by taxation for Grace Cottage Hospital? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it, and the article passes. Article 9. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise the amount of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund to be solely dedicated for future capital needs? Is there a motion? Myra. And a second would be Gunther. Article 9 is on the floor. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise the amount of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund to be solely dedicated for future capital needs? Is there any discussion?
Madam Moderator, I just have a question. I look at this article, which talks about future capital needs, and I look at a subsequent article where we're talking about borrowing for capital projects. I'm just curious how they go together, if it's not out of order.
I do believe that this was a question you had last year as well. Do we want to have the same question, and is there someone willing to give the same answer?
I don't remember asking for the answer.
Okay, well, we're all in the same boat. Is there anyone who can answer Mr. Morse's question? Is this out of order? Doris Knetchel. You have to keep them separate. And do you have Mr. Morse's questions about the order in which you decide things? Do you have any insight into that? Just say it. Yeah. Is there any further discussion of Article 9? Yes, Mr. Katz. Okay, we can't all hear you, so we're going to ask you to please come and take the mic.
I'm sorry. In the past, the amount we voted to raise for capital projects has been around 75,000 euros. Just wondering what the reason was for moving to 125 this year.
All right. Is there anybody? Dennis, want to speak?
Hear me? Hello?
Yes, if you hold it really close.
This was something that we discussed during the budget meetings, and at the recommendations of our the auditors, the town auditors, and our treasurer, over the past years, at least since I've been on the board, and I went back through quite a few town reports over the years, and we show on I think it's page, I believe it's page
17 through 19.
Page 19 on the capital reserve. Capital reserve to be used, $67,871 for fiscal year 2012-13. And then if you look down at the bottom of the page, you'll see there's a balance in the capital reserve of negative $20,649. And at the recommendation of both the treasurer and the auditors, that is improper, and you can't be using money that you don't have, and you can't borrow money to borrow money. And that was the reason for the addition of the $50,000 to the capital reserve fund that we have had, that we've only been funding $75,000. The thought was over the next few years, I think it's next 2 years, our thought, other boards may change their mind, was to continue the 125, build the fund, and then reduce it, and try to get back to the $75,000 in about 4 or 5 years.
Is there further discussion, Maureen?
I just want to make it clear that the reason the capital went down is because of, for the past, I don't know how many years, 4 or 5 years, the boards have not put any money in the capital bridge account, whereas capital bridges has been $25,000 to $35,000 a year, because everything we ask the state about, they, and they have to go look at the bridge and send people, we have to pay for that. And I've suggested year after year that there be a budget for that, and there just isn't. So that's why I believe the capital reserve fell again. And so did the auditors.
Is there any further?
In addition to what Maureen was just saying, we also added, if you look on page 17, you'll see that we also added $25,000 to that bridge fund. And the reason being that this year we're borrowing $250,000 to our share of Bridge 14. And this board felt that we need to start building a fund so when these projects come due, we're not holding special town meetings, special votes, and multiple meetings, that we have a fund, a reserve fund there, to pay for the portion of the bridges that we need. And that was our reasoning behind it. As Chris just said, the Arch Bridge will be the next project.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion of Article 9? Hearing none, we're now ready to vote on Article 9. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to raise the amount of $125,000 to be added to the Capital Reserve Fund to be solely dedicated for future capital needs? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it, and Article 9 passes. Article 10, shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to authorize capital fund expenditures in the amount of $267,871 as proposed in the capital needs plan for the fiscal year 2013. Is there a motion? Gunther Garvey has moved it, and Myra Fassler has seconded it. Thank you. Article 10 is now on the floor. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to authorize capital fund expenditures in the amount of $267,871 as proposed in the capital needs plan for fiscal year 2013? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll put it to the voters. Article 10. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane vote to authorize capital fund expenditures in the amount of $267,871 as proposed in the capital needs plan for fiscal year 2013? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. Article 10 passes. Article 11, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $198,000 for capital needs? Is there a motion? Margaret Weinberger has moved it. Is there a second? And Tom Bedell has seconded it. Thank you. So Article 11 is now on the floor. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $198,000 for capital needs? Is there any discussion? Dan DeWalt.
Can the select board give us an idea of what they have in mind with money?
The question is, someone on the select board want to say what you're thinking? Is there someone on the select board who'd like to? You're not required to, but
Dan, the majority of that cost, Dan, is for the purchase of equipment, which the International 750 is going to have to be replaced this year. Now, money will be borrowed to pay for that, but we have to show the whole amount, and that's $165,000 of that $198,000 is for that purpose.
is there any further discussion of Article 11? Yes.
Another portion of that is to do repairs on the town office.
It's Gloria Cristelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to the vote. Article 11, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize the select board to borrow up to $198,000 for capital needs? All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. Article 11 passes. Article 12, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,185,717? Do I hear a motion? And please remind me of your name. It's not on the floor yet. I need a motion. We can't amend something that's not before us. Sandy Rouse, you're moving it, and Myra Fassler is seconding it. So the motion on the floor is Article 12. Shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,185,717? And there is now chance for discussion. Yes.
Virginia Grabowski.
Will you please stand up and speak loudly? It would be best if you came to the mic. Sandy Kraus moved it, and I think Myra seconded it. Yes. It needs to be turned on, and thanks, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion.
There you go.
My motion would be to increase the amount to $1,185,917. That's an increase of $200 that I would like to go to Senior Solutions, which provide very many services to the area. And it's a $200 increase. It has not been increased for a number of years.
Is there a second? Joyce Van Pamelin has seconded it. There is a point of order here. Ken? Now I'm confused. Can she tell you how to do it, or is that only the school board? No, she can tell you. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. So there's an amendment to Article 12 to increase the amount, the dollar amount, by $200 to go specifically to Senior Solutions. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Mike Prescott, Newfane. I don't understand how this connects with the town and highway operational expenditures. If someone could explain that to me, please.
Tell me, Mr. Prescott, right, is your name? Dr. Prescott, sorry. Dr. Prescott has asked how this relates to the town of Newfane's town and highway operational expenditures, which is a very good question. So, would you, Todd, would you please take the floor and say what you have to say?
It's the same as putting the Grace Cottage and all the rest of the ones we just voted on. They come out of that budget. So she adds that to this budget. It's coming out of the same budget we already, all the rest of them we just approved, Grace Cottage and Valley Cares and all that, that comes out of this budget too.
Yes, Gunther Garvey. Thank you for that point of information. Greg Rickard. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, please stand up. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? We're ready to vote on the amendment to Article 12. The amendment will increase Article 12 by $200, and the amendment that, if you're in favor of the amendment, we're going to vote again after we decide what to do with the amendment. So we're just voting on the amendment, which would make Article 12 read, shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,185,917 with $200 allocated to Senior Solutions. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. So now we have to vote on Article 12. Article 12 is shall the voters of the town of Newfane authorize town and highway operational expenditures in the amount of $1,185,917. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye. And those opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and Article 12 passes as amended. Article 13, to transact any other business that legally may come before the town. Mike Granger. I think it might still be on.
If my memory serves me correctly, we used to vote on the auditor's report, and this page 42 doesn't really give us any information. It's not a reflection on the board. I'm just wondering why all of a sudden the auditor's report isn't here and we don't vote on it anymore. We have had a few problems in some of our record keeping, and I'm just curious. Thank you.
Is there anyone who can speak to Mike Granger's question? If there is no objection and the House allows it, Shannon Meckel has offered to speak. Hearing no objection, Shannon? Okay, Shannon, I think you're going to have to come up and take the mic. I know people don't like to use microphones, but they really do help.
Is it already on? Okay. So in past years, we've been having trouble getting the audit done in time to put it in the town report. This year was actually worse due to the flood. We've actually had to postpone meeting with the auditors. We're supposed to have it done November 1st, and that didn't happen. And to date, the auditors still have not completed the audit.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about the audit? Jean Wilson.
Does this mean that we would have to have another meeting to approve this?
Mrs. Wilson asks, does this mean we have to have another meeting to approve it? Since that's a procedural question, since there is no article warning it, we haven't been asked to approve it this year. So, Maureen.
It's not required by law anymore to be in the town report or to approve it, but the town officers, we do have a draft in the town office, and anybody that wants to come in, I'll print up that draft for you. We don't have the final yet.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion of the auditor's report? Yes, Gloria Costello.
Gloria Costello. Part of the understanding, too, is that 3 years ago, I believe, the then sitting select board, they had the audit, but to save paper was the information I was given that the audit was not included in the town report. So it might be something that the town people could consider, and hopefully, no flood will come up again this next year, and we would have it so that we could see what the audit is.
Is there any further discussion about the audit report? Greg?
Greg Bradford, yes. I would like to encourage the selectmen, please include that in the report. That's very important information. I don't think we should have to go online or stop in or anything else to look at that. That tells us the whole deal, how the town's doing. I understand this year with them not getting it done, the flood, that's fine. But I please would encourage you to make sure that is done and that it is available to the people in the report that we receive.
Any other discussion about the audit? Yeah, John Mack.
It just does seem a very reasonable request. Not quite a demand, not quite a result. But it does seem very reasonable. It's certainly something that the new select board will take up in select board meetings. And so which are duly warned, and it's obviously, the town, come and see what we're up to.
I do believe that was an invitation to the second and fourth Thursday of the month at first and third Thursday at 6:30 in the evening at the Newfane town offices. You will find our select board hard at work. Doris.
One of the important things for having the audit available at town meeting is to know whether or not there is a deficit or a surplus. If there's a deficit, then the town should be raising, that should be part of the budget that we voted on to raise the taxes to cover that deficit. And we don't know if there's a deficit or not. The other thing is if there's a surplus, that surplus could be used with the agreement of the voters to lower the amount that we have to vote towards budgets. So not having that information at town meeting is really detrimental to the town. Do you understand what I just said?
Yes, I understand it entirely. And I think it was very clear. Is there any further discussion about the audit? Very interesting discussion. Is there any other business to come before, that may legally come before the town? Does anybody else have something to say? Dan DeWalt.
I would like to move that we pass this two-sentence, non-binding resolution, which says the following. The town of Newfane recognizes that for-profit corporations should not be accorded the rights given to natural persons by the U.S. Constitution. Sentence number 2. Congress and the states should have the authority to regulate corporations and set limits on all election contributions and expenditures.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Gerald? Julian? And you? Cisse. The motion is the town of Newfane recognizes that for-profit corporations should not be accorded the rights given to natural persons by the U.S. Constitution. Congress and the states should have the authority to regulate corporations and to set limits on all election contributions and expenditures. Is there any discussion?
Well, Dan, bring this up. This is taking us away from the road today.
This is has come up under other business that may legally come before the town, and I believe it's, this is a time for people to talk about whatever they want to talk about. Yeah.
This is part of it.
This is Article 13, is all other business. So that's when this can come up. It is, however, I'll remind everybody, we can't make any binding decisions. This is all non-binding, but it is a time to talk. And so, is there any further discussion on the motion that is before us? Yes, Mr. Pelsu.
Neil Pelsu, I have to speak against the motion because the motion is not size specific, and I think the concern is with larger corporations. And if I were an individual and incorporated, as many of our Vermont farms are incorporated, they are for-profit businesses, and I don't think that it is right to take their voice in government away by virtue of a motion like this. And furthermore, in my mind, it just simply provides an easy ride for incumbents.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dan Misnick.
Dan's point, I think there were 2 points. One was the corporations, and the second was to do with the second point again? Yeah. There were 2 there.
Congress's right to control elections.
Right, which are really 2 separate issues. And the second issue there, I think, is important because we were just turned down, I think, what the state was through the courts in dollar amounts. Maybe there is a time and a place to discuss it. Maybe not here, but I mean, it is on a local level, though, so that was one point you had made that was not local. And I think
I haven't made any points.
someone did on the board.
Okay. I'm just directing the traffic of the conversation.
Someone on the board eventually. It is a local, obviously we were turned down as a state that we couldn't restrict the amount of dollars that were contributed.
Is there further discussion? I have to let everybody else speak first. Gerald, did you want to speak?
Gerald Julian Cisse, South Newfane. And even though these are topics in the national level, they do affect us right here day to day. And even though we don't have it on our warnings, some towns in the state of Vermont have gone ahead and had it in their articles. And so it's just sending a larger voice. We need to do that as people because we tend to get drowned out by large corporations making big, big donations. And yes, I understand there are small corporations, small groups of people, but that's where we need to have some better regulations over it. And what this particular Citizens First has done is allowed just rampant large corporations to have a larger voice. So I think this is the place that we have that.
Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dan, you can talk now.
Thanks. With respect to corporations, this isn't saying corporations shouldn't have any rights. This is simply saying corporations should not have the exact same rights as people, which is what has happened by the Supreme Court case. Corporations are regulated by law. They have rights, they have responsibilities, and they were originally made to be able to make something happen, whether it to be sell a product or build a bridge or whatever. What has happened over time is they have taken the power that they've gotten from their profits and they have changed their rights to now equal those rights of individuals. And now they claim that money is speech, and they claim that they are people, except they can't be prosecuted for crimes like murder or destruction. In fact, right now, one of the largest corporations in the world is testifying in court that they can't be held responsibility. Shell Oil says they can't be held responsible for deaths, murders of people in Nigeria on their behalf, because only people or governments can be held responsible for that, and they're actually a corporation. So they want to have it both ways. So corporations have their own set of laws. No one's trying to take corporations away. We're simply saying corporations are not people. Seems fairly obvious. And also, this seems to me to be a very local issue, because there's nothing more local than our own democracy and our own power in our own hands, which we are losing.
Tom Bedell, would you like move the question? Is there a second to move the question? Myra Fasslers. So this is a non-binding vote. I vote is in favor of the resolution, and no vote is opposed to it. I'm going to read it again, just so you know what you're voting on. Not punchy. The town of Newfane recognizes that for-profit corporations should not be accorded the rights given to natural persons by the U.S. Constitution. Congress and the states should have the authority to regulate corporations and to set limits on all election contributions and expenditures. All those in favor of this motion, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed by saying no. No. The ayes appear to have it. It goes in the record that this motion has been passed. Is there any further discussion? Any other topics to come under other business? Bruce Hasselbeck?
Bruce Hasselbeck. I've lived in Newfane for 22 years, and I would just like to make a comment on some of the minor appropriations. Over the years, there's been a list of various charities, and they get $1,000 or $2,000, and we've always been very generous towards them. When I started here, when I started living here, there was an item about $2,000 a year that we would give to Rescue Inc. But then a few years ago, Rescue Inc. fell into some financial problems, so the money to them had to be dramatically increased. And it's gone up to $30,000. Now it's in the budget to $45,000. to my way of thinking, this is kind of disproportionate because we're only giving Grace Cottage Hospital $2,000, but we're giving the ambulance service $45,000. To my way of thinking, I think it's a bad trend for us to be sinking lots and lots of money into subsidizing various healthcare organizations. I don't really think it's the town's business. I'd like to see Newfane work with other towns and to encourage Rescue Inc. to finance their service by charging the people who use the service rather than us subsidizing it. So I would like to see this be worked on in the past so that 5 years from now it's not $100,000. So I'd just like to make that comment that I think it's a disturbing trend and I'd like to see it addressed, bring it back to what it was.
Is there anyone who wants to address this particular issue for further conversation on what was brought up? Dr. Garvey.
Dr. Garvey, I go to lots of select board meetings, and Rescue Inc. comes once a year with a per capita assessment.
Can everybody here get there?
They come annually with a per capita assessment, which we do not have a choice over. The only choice we have, basically, is to leave them and develop another service. The other thing is they have 2 tiers of fees. There is a fee that addresses members, I believe, south of Dummerston. And then there's a fee for addresses members north of Dummerston. And no matter what we do, because most of the towns north of the dividing line do not have representatives. Newfane is the only representative on Rescue Inc., as I understand it, that fights for the northern section, and as a result is invariably outmaneuvered and outvoted. So what you're saying is important, but basically we don't have a choice. Either we belong and pay, or we don't pay and don't belong and don't have that service. My understanding.
Yes.
Eloquently covered that, but I would just like to add, just so Brian is aware, that the select board, at least the 3 years that I've been on the select board, we've fought this battle. We've made no headway whatsoever. We've even tried to get ourselves switched from the Newfane North section to the section, the Dummerston South section, and we seem to get nowhere. So it's not that we're blind to this. We are working on it, but we have gotten nowhere to date.
Is there any further discussion about Rescue Inc.? Is there any further discussion? I know that Gary Katz wants to.
I just didn't want to let the meeting end before we had a chance to express appreciation and thanks to Dennis Wiswall for his service as Select Board Chair this year. He came in at a very inopportune time. I'm glad it was him rather than me, but he did a wonderful job, and I'd just like to express that appreciation. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
Say thank you to everybody. It's a privilege and an honor. I enjoyed it. Great, I have to say, experience that I didn't anticipate, especially this past year, and I certainly know more about roads and bridges than I ever expected.
That was more about
I'd like everybody to consider kind of a dilemma that we're in as a town. Every 4 years, we have our presidential primary, and that requires, and I think my understanding is this is the first time we've combined the primary voting with the town vote here. And the town is required to have a special telephone and a line in here. So Fairpoint and Connie Fairclough, who worked with Fairpoint during the flood, was tremendous. we have a telephone here. My thought is that we put in, somebody very graciously put in a line at Williamsville Hall. And if we could shift maybe 2 times in a row, be here, so that the 4th year, we're actually in Williamsville Hall, then we wouldn't have to pay out a lot more money. It's not tremendous. It's about $85 for us to get this phone put in here. So we could consider that if it's anything that people want to come to select board meetings and discuss. We know that we've agreed Williamsville one year, here the next year. But we've somehow, like if you've ever been in a marching band, you gotta just kind of take that skip and stay 1 year, a second year in a row.
Madam Moderator, probably within 4 years we'll have cell service in the village of Newfane. So that would
That was a question I wanted to ask.
It has to be a special phone.
Is there any further discussion about telephones or cell service? Is there anyone else have any business to bring before the town meeting? Fred Bacon?
I was just curious. Last year we voted to allow the use of a tabulating machine for the voting. I wondered what the status is.
So Fred has said that last year we did vote to allow a tabulating machine, and he's wondering what's happened. Does anybody know? Anyone seen a tabulating machine on the street? 10 fingers.
Secretary of State's office, Kathy Shealy recommended that we use it this year for the general elections in November, so that we could get everything up to snuff. They also found out that by having the presidential election, there's been a lot of information going back with town clerks, that the tabulating machine wasn't accounting for the town vote at the same time as the presidential. So I think I'm thankful that we don't have that today, because I think it would be very confusing. But it will be there at least for November, possibly in August.
Is this, anyone else have any concerns about voting? Dan Brooks? Okay. Any other voting issues, comments? Dan, new business.
Dan Brooks, when we went to, unfortunately, Dick and Eric couldn't be here with us today, and I hope he's doing well, but at the end of his, you're helping him out with what he had to say, I think we neglected to thank him.
Thank you. Thank you for Dick Merrick. And I will risk being out of order and add to that our wishes for his speedy recovery. He's just not well. I mean, he's really, I'm sorry, it doesn't sound right. I have a message on his machine, and if he hadn't identified him, I would not have recognized his voice. He has an upper respiratory ailment that's going around. He's just, and he's tired of it. And he didn't want to infect us. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Neil Pelsu.
Neil Pelsu, in light of all of the discussion that we had with regard to Article 3, I would like to respectfully request that the Select Board perhaps consider breaking up Article 3 into at least 2, if not 3, separate provisions. One dealing specifically with the annual full-time positions, that is town clerk and town treasurer, taking into effect both cost of living adjustments and performance merit with those positions. The second being the listers and other elected appointed officers, dealing with those separately, and put somewhere in one of those, or again separately, the mileage reimbursement, and probably just continuing as we have in the past with the use of the IRS provision on that. It might simplify our conversations next year.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Yes, sir.
Chris Cassidy, I don't know if the law allows it or not, but is it possible that residents can opt out of receiving a paper copy and instead just get it online in the interest of saving money and resources.
Is there any further discussion about that? Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Yes?
I move to adjourn the town meeting.
There has been a move to adjourn the town meeting. Is there a second? Tom Padell. It's no discussion, no debate. All those in favor of adjournment, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Town meeting is adjourned.